Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Roach. I'm part of the Mobile Enabled Community Services team, and my role with the team is that of Program Operations Manager. This morning I am joined by my colleague Ilana Cohen, who's based out of Nairobi and leads our efforts in Africa. Thanks very much for joining us today. The way that we'll be running this webinar is basically Ilana will go through a presentation that gives an overview of both us as an organization as well as the grants and the Innovation Fund itself. And then we're going to open up the floor to Q&A, and we'll go through kind of the logistics of that at the end of the presentation. But feel free to type in questions in the questions box in the meantime, and we'll take note of those throughout the presentation and also go through them at the end. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Ilana, and yeah, thanks again for joining us today.
Great, thank you, Mary, and thanks everyone. So yes, I'm here based in Nairobi. The other people on our team that we should tell you about include my counterpart Rahul in Delhi, and while I'll be looking after the grant applications and grantees in Africa, Rahul will be looking after those in Asia. And then we have also on our team Ellen, who does a lot of our communications and our research, so you'll probably be hearing from her. And then we have Michael Meek, who does a lot of our research. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. If you are having any technical difficulties, do type into the question box, and we can hopefully address those. And hopefully the technical difficulties aren't on my side. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So just an overview of what we'll be looking at. Firstly, we'll introduce you to the GSMA Mobile Enabled Community Services Program, and then provide an introduction to the Innovation Fund, look at who's eligible and what the application process and timeline look like, and then answer your questions. So to give you an overview of the GSMA, we represent the interests of mobile operators around the world with nearly 800 mobile operator members over 220 countries. And our Mobile for Development group brings together our mobile operator members in the wider mobile industry with the development community to drive commercial mobile services for underserved people in emerging markets. And we do this by identifying opportunities for social, economic, and environmental impact that stimulate the development of scalable, life-enhancing mobile services. So I think the real premise of our program is that the mobile infrastructure is the predominant infrastructure in emerging markets right now. And our program seeks to look at how we can leverage that to enable access to community services, namely energy and water services. And the reasons that we look at energy and water services, as you'll see on the next slide, the reality that we face is that we have all these subscribers to mobile that are off the electricity grid. So we have 4 million people globally with access to the mobile network before they have access to electricity. And you can see here in the top two pictures just how important the mobile network is to them in the top photo, where they've actually got their mobile phones up on sticks to reach that last boundary of where the network reaches to receive those important SMS and phone calls. And then in the picture below that, you can see the cost that these people pay in order to just keep their phones charged to access the network services. Some of our studies have shown that up to half or more of monthly expenditure on mobile goes towards charging, and then there's also the time, of course, of walking to and from to get your phone. And then in the last photo, what we see here is a fairly classic scene of women and young girls collecting water at a water point. And here we have a mobile tower right behind them in the background. And this photo really represents the fact that 165 million people have access to the mobile network before they have access to clean water. And so what this program is doing is saying, how can we leverage the mobile technology to enable access to those services? So how we do that is through a few key focus areas. We provide advisory services to mobile operators on what these opportunities are. And we also do research and knowledge sharing through case studies, working groups, and our own primary research. And then through a partnership with the UK government, we are deploying 2.4 million in funds to support innovation and trials. And actually this partnership with the UK government covers the other areas that we're working on as well, including the advisory service and the research and knowledge sharing. The funding and time frame for the program is a total of £4.1 million in funding, including the 2.4 that goes out in the form of grants. And this is through the Department for International Development's Climate and Environment team, and it's to be deployed between 2013 and 2014. So now we'll move on to an introduction of the Innovation Fund itself. As I mentioned, this is we're fortunate to have this opportunity through a partnership with the UK government and their financial support. The program seeks to address the following questions. We're looking to understand what really are the types of mobile technology that can support community services. And then if we want to build these things at scale to have a really broad impact, what are the building blocks that are needed? And finally, what are the real social and commercial impacts of delivering community services for underserved mobile subscribers? So the objectives of the fund that we're overall looking for are to really accelerate the efforts to use mobile technology to enable improved or increased access to water or energy services for underserved communities. And through that, we want to identify the innovative business models that can support mobile innovations for energy and water services. And at the same time, generate knowledge about the application of mobile-enabled services, which can be shared with the broader development community and mobile industry. And with this, we're also seeking to stimulate productive partnerships between mobile operators or tower companies with energy providers, water providers, and NGOs, entrepreneurs, and academics that are all working in this space to achieve the objectives at scale. So next we'll look at what are the expected outcomes of this fund. The fund overall is seeking to develop at least 9 new technologies or models using mobile to support energy and water service provision for underserved communities, reaching 270,000 people. We're also seeking to generate best practices and lessons for applying mobile technology to service delivery and building blocks for scaling. At the individual grant project level, what we're expected to result is the design and launch of commercially sustainable product or service that increases or improves access to water or energy for underserved communities. And at the same time, really generate the evidence of the social and economic value of these offerings. And finally, again, to generate insights into best practices, particularly around serving underserved communities. So now we'll look at how the mechanics of the fund are structured. So this is an overview, and we'll break it down from here. I'm sure this will prompt lots of questions, but your questions will probably be answered in the next few slides. The overview is that we have seed grants and we have market validation grants. Now taking a look firstly at the seed grants. These are aimed at supporting research and development of early stage innovations that use mobile to enable access to sustainable energy and water services. And the target applicants here are early innovators. And that could be an energy service provider or a water service provider, or it could be a mobile operator working in this field, or perhaps an NGO or a university. It's fairly open. We'll come back to that in a bit. The maximum grant value is up to £200,000, where this represents up to 75% of the total project cost. And the other 25% of the project cost needs to be from the grantee. So this is a matching fund requirement, and it can be in the form of in-kind contribution or in cash. And we're looking to support a minimum of 5 grants in this category, where we're subject to a total spending cap of £1 million. And these need to be executed within a year. The market validation grant, on the other side, is really looking to support a promising business model that support improved or increased access to energy or water services at scale. So this is where we're looking to see something that's had the proof of concept previously, and that's been achieved, or a pilot has been achieved, and this is to take that to the next level. It also needs to be a partnership between a mobile operator or tower company on the one hand, partnered with a service provider, whether in energy or water. And we can also have other actors in that partnership, such as NGOs, research organizations. These grants are for up to £350,000, which will represent up to half of the total project cost. So this is where we have a matching fund requirement of 50%. So the grantee will need to put forward 50% of the costs, again, either in cash or in kind, and the GSMA MECS Fund will put forward the other 50% up to £350,000. Here we're looking to have a minimum of 4 awards with a total cap of £1.4 million. And these are, again, to be utilized, the funds need to be utilized within a year. So now we'll dig into this a little more deeply. Oops, hang on a minute. There we go, to the next slide. Oh, and this is just to illustrate, we had some questions about the cost sharing. So this hopefully provides a really clear picture of how the cost sharing works with the seed grant, where GSMA provides 75% of the costs and the grantee 25%. And then on the market validation grant, where it's a 50-50 split. So nextly, let's look into the project eligibility. In the general eligibility for both grants is that we're open to applications from around the globe, but really we're focusing on sub-Saharan Africa and South and Southeast Asia right now. And the reason being that this is where we see the greatest opportunities through our research that has built the foundation of this program. And the sector that we're focusing on, again, is using mobile to enable access to improved or increased energy or water services. And again, focusing on the access for those underserved communities. The organization needs to be registered and operating in the country of project implementation, in satisfactory financial health, and it needs to have the internal capability and capacity to implement the project proposed within the agreed time frame. So here we're looking at the knowledge and the know-how being the capability and the resources being the capacity. The organization needs to also have demonstrated knowledge or experience working with underserved communities. On the use of funds, the grants can go toward project management, research, content development, hardware, software, measuring results, and can also be used towards professional fees and salaries of consultants. Because part of our program seeks to develop evidence and best practices, we need our grantees to commit to sharing data and insights arising from their project. We understand that some commercial data needs to be treated as confidential, and we can work with that. So some of this knowledge sharing will include participation in the performance monitoring, but then also in peer sharing via working groups and other forums. And we'll be doing some case studies as well in this area. Okay, let's look now at more of the seed grant eligibility requirements. So here, the organization can be an individual NGO, a small entrepreneur, academic organization, or a mobile operator or tower company, and also it could be a private or public service provider. This is relatively open, and that's just based on the different actors we're seeing in this space. It can also be a consortium of these actors, and where that's the case, we'll need to see an agreement for how the partners propose to work together and divide responsibilities, and their mutual commitment to the project. At the project level, what we need to see is that the project will implement and research, the project should aim here to implement research and development of early stage innovations using mobile technology to support sustainable energy or water provision. And a key is to use the mobile communications channel as a significant element of the delivery model. It needs to have an innovative model that demonstrates the potential to improve or increase access to water energy on a sustainable basis, where we have a preference for projects that provide equitable access to underserved women, and for those not easily supported by commercial sources of finance. And the funding here needs to be utilized within the one-year life cycle of the fund. So moving along to look at the eligibility requirements for the market validation grants. This is again where we require a partnership or consortium between a mobile operator, which is a member of the GSMA, or a tower company, partnered with a service provider, either energy service provider or water service provider. And where we have a consortium here, again, we will need to see an agreement of how the parties will work together and divide responsibilities and their real mutual commitment and interest in this. The project here needs to use mobile communications channel, again, as a significant element of the service delivery model. And here, where we're looking at things that have previously proved at a pilot level or concept level, we need to see that this will result directly in increased or improved access to energy or water services for underserved communities. Commercially sustainable business model is a key thing here that we need to see, so that we're putting funding towards something that then has a business model to continue on once the funding has been used. The preference is for, again, projects that provide equitable access to underserved women with a means for forecasting the extent of the outreach. So here we need to see how many people are using this service, the frequency of use. This should be something that's not easily supported by commercial sources of finance, and the funding again needs to be utilized within the one-year life cycle. The priority is for those projects which are most likely to be replicable at scale, and I think that you can tell by the language here, we understand that not everything is going to be a cut and paste job, and certainly that it's important to look at the context, and we realize that replicability and scalability are very context dependent. But we want to see things that do have replicability and scalability in mind and with a strong potential. So let's now look at what the application process and timeline look like. So this first slide provides an overview of what the process is. So we'll look into this in more detail after, but the overview is that firstly, an organization submits a concept note. And this is reviewed by our external fund manager, who confirms the eligibility and then would invite an organization to submit an application. The organization then submits an application. Through this process, what we have below is that GSMA MECS team can provide support to help shape quality applications. So we'll talk about that again on the next slide. But we think that's a really unique part of our program, is that we can provide support and feedback and consultation during the concept note and application stage to really develop strong ideas that we think have the greatest chance of success and impact. So back to the process at the top, the fund manager then reviews the applications with the expert selection panel and provides recommendation for awarding grants. The grantee and GSMA then complete a grant agreement once it's awarded. The grantee launches the project, and then GSMA continue to support that implementation through the project. So moving along, sorry, a bit of a delay. Looking now at the concept notes and applications. At the concept note, what we're looking for is to provide a high-level overview of what is this concrete project and what is the impact here. We keep this relatively simple at 3 pages, where we evaluate the concept notes based on their fulfillment of the eligibility criteria, alignment with fund objectives, and the likelihood of being a strong application as well. In the application stage, here we need to have a more fully developed and articulated concept and project plan. So we will have a full application form that will include a project work plan, a budget, key performance indicators, and the monitoring approach, as well as the CVs of the management team. The additional evaluation criteria here will be the quality of the concept and implementation plan, adequate capacity and resources to execute it, potential to really inform the sector with a new understanding for what are the new models that can enable access to water, energy, and how can they be sustainable business models as well. We need to see what the added value is of this GSMA funding. If it's something that's sort of already on its way, it may not quite be as much interest as something where this funding really adds a lot of new value and new opportunity to have impact. And again, the likelihood of scalability and replicability is a key criteria here. So finishing up sort of here, we just want to look at the who's who in the Innovation Fund. So as I mentioned earlier, we have an independent selection panel, and their job will be to work with our fund manager, who's Kofi International, to evaluate applications and awards based on the selection criteria that we've identified with them. And on this expert panel, we'll have experts in energy, in water, in mobile, in development, so we will certainly have somebody who understands and has lots of practical experience working in the area that your project is in. The fund manager, Kofi International, will be also reviewing the concept notes to determine eligibility and alignment with Innovation Fund objectives. And they will be supporting the selection panel with the evaluation of the criteria that we've agreed on. And once a grant is awarded, they'll be working sort of on the administrative side to ensure compliance with the grant agreement terms and project plans. And again, at the bottom, what we're showing is that the GSMA MECS team, including myself and Mary, Rahul and Delhi, Michael, Ellen, and even our wider Mobile for Development program, we're available to provide various types of levels of support at each step. So feedback on the concept note ideas, support during the application process, and ongoing support and advice throughout the implementation. So now looking at the timeline, now the key thing I'm about to show you is that you should observe is that the timeline here is for the first round of grants, meaning there is a second round of grants, and that's on the next slide. So if this looks a bit terrifying, just hang on. There's a second round. We don't think it's too terrifying with the concept notes due at the end of this month, the 30th of June, because we know there's a lot of ideas already in there in this space, and the concept note is a relatively simple document to complete, though it does take some thought. But where a lot of thought has already gone into these ideas, those should probably be ready to go on paper. And so we will then respond with invitations to submit applications on the 8th of July, moving towards receiving applications on the 4th of August, announcing awards in mid-September, and then getting the grant agreement signed and moving towards implementation at the beginning of October. So let's look now at what the overall process looks like in terms of additional rounds. So this is the first round in June and August. And then we will have a second round in September to October. So if that June 30th date doesn't work with what you're working on right now, please keep in mind the second round. There will be funding still available at that second round. And then we do have a possibility of having a third round in November to January. The reason that this is an uncertainty, whether we'll have a third round, it relates to two constraints. And the first constraint is that we're selecting these awards on a competitive basis so that we're really finding the most compelling, most promising innovations, applications of mobile to enable access to energy and water services. So we do have a limit there also with the overall spending cap in terms of how much money we have to give out. And that's the other reason that we aren't sure whether there'll be a third round. It depends on how many awards are given out in the first and second round, and the cost, the amount of money that's given out with each award. Those values I gave previously, the maximum of £200,000 and £350,000 are the maximums, but we can have smaller proposals. So if we fund more proposals that request smaller amounts of money, we'll have more projects that we can fund. And the other aspect here is that we are looking to top off the funds that we've been given by DFID to have more funds to be able to do this program with. So that's also a possibility here, but still an uncertainty. So I think with that, what we'll do now is move to question and answer. I'm just going to put up here the information. If you do have questions after this, you can email us at mecsgrants@gsma.com. And that link up there is where all of the documents can be found. You don't have to write it all down, but if you go to the GSMA webpage and then you look under the Mobile for Development section, you can find the MECS program. And on that page, there's a link to our Innovation Grant Fund, and you can find the template for the concept notes, both for the seed fund and the market validation fund. And you can also find the term sheets that provide a lot of the information, well, all of the information that I've just been over in terms of guidance for the grants and eligibility.